Hello students, today we are going to discuss a very important chapter that is called thermodynamics. It is one of the important chapters in the physical chemistry. Okay, now thermodynamics. In this thermodynamics, what is the meaning of a thermo? Thermo nothing but heat or energy. And the next part will be the dynamics or dynamic nothing but the motion. That means in this chapter we have to dealing with the energy transformation and the different forms of energies in the physical process, in a chemical process, in a physico-chemical process. The branch of the science that deals with the study of different forms of energy and their interconversion. And their interconversion is known as thermodynamics. Now in this thermodynamics, if we deal with the energy changes regarding a chemical reaction. In a chemical reaction, we know in generally in a chemical reaction or during a course of a chemical reaction, the old bonds must be break down between the reacting molecules and the new bonds must be formed in the product's formation. All these phenomena, energy exchanges, energy transfers. So such study is known as a chemical thermodynamics. Chemical thermodynamics. Are you getting my point? Now, a process which occurs on its own, either on its own or with some initiation, is referred as a spontaneous process under the given set of conditions. What is a spontaneous process? It is a process occurs either its own or with some initiation under the given conditions, is known as a spontaneous process. There are a lot of spontaneous process in nature. Let's see, number one, heat flows from a hotter body to a colder body. Okay, we know when two objects are at two different temperatures, then what happens when when there are two objects, one object will be at high temperature, that is called a hot body, and other will be low temperature, that is a cold body. Obviously we know heat flows from a hotter body to a colder body by virtue of temperature difference. This is a spontaneous phenomena. Okay, number two, diffusion of gases from high pressure to low pressure. Okay, number three, current flows from a high voltage to low voltage. Water flows from a high level to low level. Mixing of gases is always spontaneous phenomena. Melting of ice. Now here the melting of ice, we know at room temperature, if you kept some ice cubes in a beaker, what happens? Ice will slowly melt to give water. Okay, this is a spontaneous phenomena. Remember, if the ice is kept at less than 273 Kelvin, let's suppose I am keeping the ice at 270 Kelvin, ice cannot be melted because the melting point of ice 0 degrees Celsius, otherwise 273 Kelvin. Are you getting my point? Above 0 degree centigrade onwards, what happens? Ice slowly melt to give liquid water. So the condition must be mentioned. Given condition only, okay, the process will feasible or not, we can tell. And one more important thing, evaporation of water, vaporization of water. All these phenomena regarding spontaneous process. Yes or no? What is the meaning of a spontaneous process? It is a process which occurs either on its own or with some initiation under the given conditions. And one more example we know, that is the combustion of fuel. Now here in this combustion of fuel, if you supply initially certain amount of heat, immediately the fuel undergo combustion. The combustion of a fuel like petrol, diesel, kerosene, all these phenomena referred as a spontaneous process. Okay. Now, what is the significance of this chapter? What is the importance of this chapter? The scope of thermodynamics. It helps to predict whether any chemical process can occur or not on its own in a given set of conditions. That is nothing but the spontaneity, otherwise feasibility of a process. This is the main importance of this chapter, whether any process will happen or not under the given set of conditions. That means, is the process feasible or not? Is the process spontaneous or not? That information can be predicted with the help of thermodynamics. Okay. The second scope of the thermodynamics, if the process is feasible, yes, If the process is spontaneous, then what kind of energy changes are occurring in this process? Okay. Next, it gives an idea about the extent of reaction and also the equilibrium concentrations of various species involved in the reaction. Are you getting my point? Next, what are the limitations, otherwise the drawbacks of this chapter, that is the thermodynamics. The first drawback, it could not explain anything about the rate of a reaction. That means how much of time will taken to complete the reaction. That could not explain by the thermodynamics. That we will deal in the chemical kinetics. That we will deal in the chapter named chemical kinetics. That means it is unable to predict the time taken for the completion of a reaction. Okay, number one. Number two, it is also could not explain the mechanism of the reaction. Mechanism of reaction, it is also one of the limitation of the thermodynamics. It could not explain the mechanism of the reaction. The reaction mechanism, that is a path of the mechanism in which a reaction going to take place, can be detailedly discussed in the name of the chapter, that is called chemical kinetics. Chemical kinetics. Chemical kinetics will deal with the rate of reactions and factors affecting the rate of reactions and what is the mechanism of the reaction. All these things we will discuss in which chapter? Chemical kinetics. And one more drawback, it is only applicable for the matter in the bulk quantity. That means it is explained total property with respect to the total system, total bulk of the matter. Okay, it could not deal with the individual atoms or individual molecules. That means suppose if you are defining any pressure or if you are defining any temperature, that will be applicable for total amount of the system. That is the, let's suppose ideal gas we have, so we are dealing with some pressure, we are dealing with some temperature, so the temperature pressure will be considered whole of the gas, and it is could not explain any individual atoms. For individual molecules, we could not explain the temperature, we could not explain the pressure in this chapter. Okay, now thermodynamics, now it is broadly divided into three parts. In the first part, we are dealing with FLOT. What is the meaning of a FLOT? FLOT nothing but the first law of thermodynamics. FLOT, first law of thermodynamics. Number one. Number two, in the first part we are dealing with internal energy, the symbols U or E. This is very important. Number three, enthalpy, that is a capital H. Number four, work done, that is the W, work, and the heat, that is will be the Q. So these are the important parameters which we will discuss in the part 1 of the thermodynamics. Okay, now come to the part 2. In the part 2, we have to discuss SLOT and TLOT. What is SLOT? That is called second law of thermodynamics. And what is the TLOT? Third law of thermodynamics. So second law of thermodynamics, SLOT. Third law of thermodynamics, TLOT. Okay, and the next point we have to discuss in the part 2, that is called entropy, that is the capital S, and the Gibbs free energy or Gibbs energy, that is called G. So these are the points we have to cover in this part 2 of the thermodynamics. And one more part we have, that is called thermochemistry, that is related with the chemical reaction. Just now explain you during a course of a chemical reaction what are the energy changes occurring, that will deal in the chemical thermodynamics. It is nothing but thermochemistry. Thermochemistry. Okay. Now in the part 1 and part 2 only we deal with physical phenomena, physical processes, but whereas in the part 3 we will discuss in the chemical reactions. We will discuss chemical reactions. Okay. Now in this thermodynamics chapter there are some basic terms which we have to cover. So what are the terminology related in the thermodynamics chapter? The first one is the system. It is a small part of the universe which is selected for the thermodynamic study. Let's suppose we are dealing with a ideal gas. Let's suppose ideal gas, it is closed in a container. So in a closed container we are taking what? Ideal gas. So we are dealing with ideal gas. So the ideal gas is our system. Ideal gas is our system. Are you getting my point? Let's suppose in a test tube. In a test tube you are taking some chemical and we are studying the properties of such chemical. That chemical is referred as a system. That chemical is referred as a system. Let's suppose you are studying on a small cube. On a small cube you are studying. So this small cube is referred as a system. Anything, the small part of the universe which is under the investigation of the thermodynamics, which is selected, which is chosen for the thermodynamic study. For the thermodynamic study is referred as a system. Next definition, surroundings. It is the remaining part of the universe. It is the remaining part of the universe which is in contact with the system. Which is in contact with the system. The remaining part of the universe which is contact with the system. Okay? Which is in contact with the system is referred as what? Surrounding. So we know system plus surroundings put together is called universe. Put together is called universe. Remember, surroundings are very large quantity as compared to the system. System is a small portion. Okay, let's suppose if any changes are occurring in the system, that changes regarding, that is the compared to surroundings, negligible. That means let's suppose system loses certain amount of energy. That energy taken by whom? Surroundings. But surroundings are very large quantity. So whatever the changes occurring in the system, that will be negligible with respect to the surroundings, because surrounding is a large amount. Let's suppose ideal gas loses certain amount of heat. That heat is gained by whom? Surroundings. That means the surroundings gain the temperature, heat in the form of temperature. But even though there should not large amount increase in the temperature of the surroundings, because surroundings are basically large quantity. Whatever the changes occurring in the system, that will be negligible when we compare with the surroundings. This statement is very important. This statement is very important. Are you getting my point? Next, boundary. The zone which separates system from the surroundings. The zone, the area which can separate the imaginary or real, which may be real or imaginary, the zone which can separate both system and surroundings. Okay. Now, any matter and energy can be exchanged through this boundary only. The matter, energy can exchanges through this boundary. Okay. Now, according to the matter exchanges, according to the energy exchanges, we can divide the boundaries in the following types. The first category of a type of the boundary will be the real boundary and imaginary boundary. Real boundary which can separate between system and surroundings, and imaginary boundary, there is no any clear separation between the system and surrounding. Let's suppose in this diagram, if you see, I am taking a water in a closed container. Okay. Now in this closed container, if you see, this is the closed, this is a open, you can take open container, not closed container. In a open container, if you fill certain amount of liquid water, now what happens here? If you see, this is a clearly visible boundary for you. Okay. So this is completely on the left side, on the bottom, on the right side, the separation will be there between the system and surrounding. But on the upper portion, if you see, this is the level of the water. If you increase the level of the water will goes to upside. If you decrease the level of the water will be come to downside. So that means on the upper portion, there is no any clear separation between the system and surrounding. Such boundary is referred as imaginary boundary. If there is a clear separation between system and surrounding, that is called real boundary. If there is no any clear separation between the system and surrounding, that is called imaginary boundary. This is the first type of the boundary. And the second case or second category of the boundary will be the rigid and non-rigid boundary. Rigid boundary, non-flexible, non-rigid boundary, flexible. Rigid boundary, that is a closed sealed container. So here, neither expansion nor compression. Here in a sealed vessel, volume is constant. That means in a closed container, if you observe, the volume is constant. So in this, what happens? this boundary cannot expand or cannot compress. Are you getting my point? Such boundary is a rigid boundary. Number one. Number two, non-rigid boundary. Non-rigid boundary, here there may be expansion, there may be compression also possible. That's why here volume is not constant. Now here two diagrams are given here. In the first diagram, if you see, sealed vessel is there. This is called a rigid system, rigid. So the boundary will be the rigid boundary. Now here if you see non-rigid, so there is a one freely movable piston is fitted in a container. So this is a freely movable piston containing cylinder. Okay. Now if you see, this piston can be movable. If you move the piston to upward direction or if you move the piston towards downward direction, that means here volume can variable. Volume not constant. Volume is not constant. Such type of boundary, non-rigid boundary. Non-rigid boundary. Are you getting my point? Now the third category of the boundary, diathermic and adiabatic. Diathermic and adiabatic. Depending upon the heat energy exchanges. Now here heat exchanges between system and surrounding through the boundary. That boundary called diathermic boundary or conducting boundary wall. Okay. If the heat exchange cannot happen, no heat exchanges between the system and surrounding through the boundary, such boundary is known as a adiabatic boundary, otherwise non-conducting wall. Diathermic wall, adiabatic wall. Diathermic wall allows the heat energy to flow. Okay. Whereas adiabatic wall, it doesn't permit the flow of heat energy. Are you getting my point? Let's suppose I have two diagrams. In the left side diagram, if you see, water is present at two different temperatures. Let's suppose here 30 degrees Celsius water is present, here 50 degrees Celsius water is present, and these two systems are separated by a diathermic wall. So this is what? Diathermic wall. Okay. Now here we know diathermic wall allows the heat. Okay. So heat exchanges occurs here. Now tell me, heat flows from hotter body to colder body, that is a spontaneous phenomena. So after certain time of interval, what we expect, the temperature remains constant. Now what is the final temperature? Generally students will think the final temperature will be 40 degrees Celsius. 40 degrees Celsius. Okay, because 30 plus 50, that will be 80, and the average temperature will be the 40 degrees. But it is not always true, because the temperature, final temperature will also depend upon the amount of the water, amount of the mass of the water. Okay. Now how to find the final temperature? We know heat loss by a body will be equal to heat gained by a body. Okay. Loss of heat is equal to gain of heat. So heat loss or heat gain, that will be Q is equal to ms dt, ms delta T, where so Q loss of heat or gain of heat, heat will be equal to general formula ms delta T, where m is the mass of the system, s is the specific heat, delta T change in the temperature. Let's suppose in both the cases mass of water is same, so m1 m2 gets cancelled, and specific heat water is also constant, so ss will be get cancelled. Then the change in temperature will same. Okay, when the change in temperature will be same, if both the systems will have same amount and same specific heat. Are you getting my point? So one can conclude the final temperature obviously will be greater than the 30 degrees Celsius and less than or equal to the 50 degrees Celsius. Why I am taking the equality? Because if both the amount of water, let's suppose same, then the final temperature will be equal to what happens? Equal to or less than 50 degrees Celsius. Are you getting my point? Now suppose in the second container, I am taking water 30 degrees and water at 50 degrees. But in this case, what I am doing here, I am taking the adiabatic wall. I am taking which wall here? Adiabatic wall. In this adiabatic wall, what happens? It cannot permit the heat flow into or outside. That means the 30 degrees Celsius water and the 50 degrees Celsius water, they always kept it present at different temperature only. Are you getting my point? But actually in practically there is no any adiabatic wall. So the adiabatic wall is a one of the hypothetical situation. So if adiabatic wall, it is perfectly adiabatic wall, that means the cold water should be always cold water and hot water should be always hot water. When these two are come into contact, so definitely there should be change in the temperature, but it is not happens. If you see in thermos flask, in this thermos flask, what happens? There will be adiabatic wall. So if you take the hot water will be remains hot only for few hours only. Let's suppose 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hours. But after long time, definitely the temperature of water changes and it will become to the room temperature. Okay, there is no any perfect adiabatic wall in practically. Are you getting my point? Now here the next category of the boundary, permeable and impermeable or non-permeable. Permeable means which allows the mass exchange. If the mass exchanges occurs across the boundary, permeable boundary. If the mass exchange cannot happen across the boundary, that is called impermeable boundary. Impermeable boundary. Okay. After classification of boundaries, next we have to classify systems. How many types of the systems? There are basically 3 types of the systems. Number 1, open system. In this open system, both matter as well as energy exchanges with the surroundings. Both matter and energy exchanges with surroundings. Such system is called open system. The best example which we have, hot water in a open container. Hot water in a open container. And the next example, all living organisms including human body, plants and animals. These are undercome open system. Now here we have taking hot water in a open vessel. Are you getting my point? Now what happens? It is open container. Open container will be a non-rigid. That means the volume can be expand. Okay, and compressed. And diathermic, that means the boundary here what happens? Conducting wall. And also permeable. Here the mass can exchanges. In this situation, mass is not constant. Yes, energy is also not constant. Do you know if you take the hot coffee or hot tea in a cup, what happens? Hot coffee or hot tea in a cup, after certain time of interval it become what? Cool. That means the system loses heat energy to the surroundings. And also due to hot condition, certain vaporization also occurs. Certain evaporation is also occurs. So mass exchanging here, energy is also exchanging. Such system is called open system. Now come to the closed system. In this system what happens? Only energy can exchange but not the matter. Why the matter is not exchanging? Because the system is what happens? Closed. Here the best example which we have, hot water in a closed container or a closed vessel. Let's suppose this is a closed vessel. That means there will be no any expansion contraction in the system. That's why this is a rigid system. And diathermic, that means which allows the heat. And non-permeable, that means here mass cannot exchange because the system is completely closed. Here mass is kept constant, yes, but energy is not constant because the wall, the diathermic wall, it allows the heat exchanges. Are you getting my point? Now the third category of the system, that is called isolated system. In this system, neither matter exchanges nor energy exchanges. Neither matter exchanges nor energy exchanges. Such system is called isolated system. The best example, hot water in a thermos flask. Just now I told you. Now the boundary here, if you see the yellow color region, which is nothing but a adiabatic. This is nothing but what? Adiabatic wall. Are you getting my point? Now it is also a rigid system because the volume is constant. Okay. So in this rigid system, there is no any chance of matter to escape. That's why the mass of the system here constant, and energy is also constant. Why? The boundary will be made by which wall? Adiabatic wall. Adiabatic wall cannot allow the heat exchanges. Cannot allow the heat exchanges. So overall, how many types of systems we have? 3 systems. Number 1, open system in which both matter and energy exchanges with surroundings. Number 2, closed system in which only energy exchanges but not the matter exchanges. Number 3, isolated system in which neither matter exchanges nor energy exchanges. Okay. Now here, mode of energy transfers. the mode of transfer of energy. Energy can be transferred in how many modes? There are two different modes. The first mode of transfer of energy will be heat, and the second mode of transfer of energy will be work. Are you getting my point? How many types of mode of energy transformations here? Two types. Number one, heat form. Number two, work form. Number two, work form. Now heat. Do you know energy transfers due to temperature difference is called heat? We know heat always flows from a hotter body to a colder body by virtue of temperature difference. If there are two objects which are in two different temperatures, when they come into contact, what happens? Then heat flows from a hotter body to a colder body. The heat transfer due to temperature difference is referred as heat. The energy transfers due to temperature difference is called heat. Now heat always transfer from a body of high temperature to a body of low temperature until both the temperatures are not equal. Just now I told you here 30 degrees and 50 degrees, there are two objects. There are two objects, one object at 30 degrees, other object at 50 degrees, and both the objects now we are taking same mass. And between them there is a one boundary. That boundary is made by what? Diathermic wall. That is a good conductor of heat. After certain time of interval, if you see, now the temperature will be in both the bodies will become constant, and which is equal to 40 degrees Celsius. Now the final temperature here become what? Constant, that is the 40 degrees. Okay, now heat lost by a hot body will be equal to heat gained by a cold body. Just now in the previous case I told you. Okay, now this is the first mode of transfer of energy. What is the first mode of transfer of energy? In the form of heat. Okay, now what is the second mode of transfer of energy? That will be the work. Energy transfer which is not heat energy. Energy transfer which is not heat. Otherwise, energy transfer which is not due to temperature difference. The energy transfer which is not due to temperature difference is known as the work form of the energy. Otherwise, the energy which is transferred due to force, because of force. If you apply some force due to which there will be some work done, due to that work done, the energy transfers is known as work form of the energy. Are you getting my point? So how many types of mode of transformation of energy? Two modes. What is the first mode? Heat form of the energy. What is the second mode? Work form of the energy. What is the definition of heat energy? It is the energy transfer by virtue of temperature difference. What is the work form of energy? It is the energy transfer. It is the energy transfer which is not due to temperature difference. Which is not due to temperature difference. And which is due to what? Force. Which is due to what? Force. Now here I am giving three diagrams. In the first diagram, ideal gas is taken. In the second diagram also, and in the third diagram also we are taking the ideal gas. Now in the first diagram what happens? We are taking one movable piston. We are taking some movable piston. It is a closed system. It is a closed system, and what is the boundary of this closed system? Made by diathermic wall. Diathermic wall which can allow the heat content. That means here heat of the system is not constant. It can be exchanges, and also here work done. Here work done will not equal to 0 because the piston is movable. So due to which there will be expansion, compression. That's why here work done is also not equal to 0. Are you getting my point? In the second case, diathermic wall, but the system is rigid system. Rigid in the sense closed system. So volume is constant. So volume is constant. That's why there will be no any expansion, no any compression. So there is no any work done. That's why work done here I am taking 0. But here heat energy can exchange because the system has which boundary? Diathermic boundary, which allows the heat. Okay, heat content. Now the third closed system, here we are taking the boundary adiabatic wall. Adiabatic wall which does not permit the heat exchanges. That's why no heat exchanges and also no work done because the system is closed. Are you getting my point? Now here there are some true and false statements which we have. the first statement, a closed system has always constant volume. Is it correct or incorrect? Incorrect. This is the false statement, because if you see in the first case, in the first diagram, it is a closed system, but there is a movable piston, due to which if you apply the force, the piston will be shifted towards down. That means volume undergo contraction. If you remove the force, again the system, that means the piston move towards upward direction. So there will be expansion, contraction, compression, even the system is closed, because the system possesses movable piston, easily frictionless, easily movable piston. That means in this case, the first statement, a closed system has always constant volume, that is the false statement. That will be false statement. Number 2, neither heat nor matter exchanges between system and surrounding, then the system must be isolated. Now, most of the students will say this is the correct statement, this is the true statement. But this is also false statement. It is also false statement. Remember, I am saying neither heat nor matter exchanges between system and surrounding is called isolated system. What is the exact definition of isolated system? It is a system in which no energy exchanges, no matter exchanges. Now energy exchanging, that means the energy has two modes, that is the heat mode of energy and the work form of the energy. Now here, if you carefully observe, this is false statement, because the reason I am giving here, in a closed adiabatic system, matter cannot be exchanges, but energy can be exchanges in the form of work due to the force. Are you getting my point? Let's suppose in the first diagram, if you see, let's suppose in this first diagram, if you remove this adiabatic wall and if you remove this diathermic wall and allow the adiabatic wall. Now the adiabatic wall, okay. Now here if you see, the container is sealed, closed vessel, but there is a movable piston, due to which there will be a work form of energy. Work form of energy will be there. That's why the second statement, that is the neither heat nor matter exchanges between system and surrounding, then the system must be isolated. This is also false statement. Okay. Now a isolated system will be a closed system. A isolated system will be a closed system. Yes, this is correct. This is correct statement. Are you getting my point? But a closed system will be an isolated system? No, because in a closed system, if you use the adiabatic wall, that means third diagram, if you see, in the third diagram it is a closed system, but adiabatic wall is there, so it cannot permit the heat energy exchanges. That is a isolated system, that is not a closed system. Are you getting my point? Now the fifth statement, what is the fifth statement? An adiabatic container fitted with movable adiabatic piston will form isolated system. It is also incorrect. It is also false, because in the second statement, just we explain the second statement, if there is a movable piston is there, definitely there must be some work done due to force. That's why here energy mode, that is the work form, will exchange, but heat energy cannot exchange, but the work form of energy can exchange. That's why statement 5 is false statement. Statement 6, an adiabatic container fitted with a rigid adiabatic piston will form a isolated system. Here you see, rigid means closed container. That means there is no any work done. If there is no any work done, there is no any mode of exchanging of energy in the form of work. And also it is a adiabatic system. That's why there is no any heat exchanges. That means the system, the statement 6 is the perfectly true statement. It's perfectly true statement. Okay. Now come to statement number 7. An adiabatic container fitted with a rigid adiabatic piston will form a closed system. Will form a closed system. Are you getting my point? This statement is a false statement. Adiabatic container fitted with adiabatic piston. Are you getting my point? Will form a closed system. Now in a closed system, what happens? Matter cannot exchange, but heat energy can exchange. Energy can exchange. Are you getting my point? Now, state variables. There are certain variables which required to define the state of a system is called state variable. So these state variables are basically measurable properties of a system. So pressure, volume, temperature. These are the basic three important state variables. Now the state of a system, when the state variables of a system are defined for a particular state of a system, then the system is said to be in a particular state. Let's suppose we are taking some ideal gas in a closed container. In a closed container, we are taking ideal gas. In the initial state, the pressure P1, volume V1, temperature T1. Let's suppose if I am changing the temperature, then pressure changes and volume also changes. So here the final state P2, V2, T2. That is the state 2. Are you getting my point? If the temperature changes, that means heat exchanges occurs. Yes or no? Now if the PV changes, definitely energy changes. Why the PV changes, energy changes? If you see the units of the P and V, the product of the PV, do you know the SI unit for the pressure will be Pascal, that is Newton for meter square, and volume for SI unit will be the meter cube. Meter cube. The product of the PV, if you see Newton into meter, nothing but joule. So the PV unit will be equal to joule. If the PV changes, energy exchanges. If the temperature changes, heat exchanges. Are you getting my point? Now, thermodynamic properties. The measurable properties of a thermodynamic system known as a thermodynamic properties. Here there are two different types of thermodynamic properties which we have to discuss here. The first one is the extensive property and second one will be the intensive property. Are you getting my point? It is very important regarding the objective examination. Okay. Now we have to see what are the differences and what are the definition of extensive and intensive properties. Okay. Now in the extensive property, the first point, the definition, these are the properties of a system which depend upon the total mass of the system. It is according to the NCERT textbook. The definition is given as follows. The properties of a system which depend upon the total amount, that is the total mass that is present in the system. If the system properties which depend upon the mass of the system, that property is referred as a extensive properties. Okay. Now what are the intensive properties? These are the properties of a system which are independent on the total mass of the system. So for to remember, in intensive the first letter will be I and independent the first letter will be I. So that's why we can easily remember intensive properties, they are independent on the mass of the system. Are you getting my point? The second point, the mass dependent properties are called extensive and mass independent properties are called intensive. Just now I told you I stands for intensive. Okay. Now the extensive properties are also referred as a additive in nature, additive properties. Now these are non-additive properties. What is the meaning of additive and non-additive? Suppose if I am taking a system, let's suppose I am taking one system, let's suppose I am taking one cube. Okay. Now if you divide the system into two or more parts, let's suppose I am dividing the system into two parts, then the extensive properties changes. But whereas in intensive properties, if you divide the system into two or more parts, there will be no change in the property of the system. The properties which changes on the division, are called extensive, and which do not changes on division is called intensive. Suppose if the system is there, I am taking the system into two equal parts. Are you getting my point? After dividing the system into two equal parts or two non-equal parts, if the properties which are measurable, if they are changes, that means they are extensive property. If they are do not changes, that means they are intensive properties. Okay. Now clearly I will explain by taking some examples. The first example here we have mass, and second example volume, internal energy. Next example enthalpy, entropy, Gibbs energy, mole, heat capacity, resistance. These are the some important properties of a system which are called extensive properties. Do you know mass is an extensive property? Let's suppose I am taking the 1 kg mass of a system. Okay. Let's suppose I am dividing the system into two equal parts. Then what is the mass of the system? On the left hand side, 0.5 kilogram. On the right side is also 0.5 kilogram. Yes or no? So that means when we dividing the system into two equal parts, the properties which are measurable also dividing into equal. That means these properties depend upon the mass of the system. Are you getting my point? Even if you see the volume also, if the volume of the system is V, so if you divide equal parts into two equal parts, so in each equal part the volume become V by 2. Okay, let's suppose I am taking the number of moles N. So on the left side container you have N by 2 moles, on the right side container you have N by 2 moles, because we are dividing the system into two equal parts. Even heat capacity, resistance, Gibbs energy, these are the very important examples which we have to remember compulsory. Are you getting my point? Now come to intensive property, well-known example: density, pressure, temperature, vapor pressure, melting point, boiling point. Remember, whatever the physical constants, whatever the constants for a particular substance, all these parameters are regarding as a intensive properties. Do you know melting point of a substance will be constant at atmospheric pressure, vapor pressure, boiling point, freezing point, viscosity, surface tension, resistivity. Remember, resistance is an extensive property. Resistivity, that is called specific resistance. Resistivity nothing but specific resistance is a intensive property. Now refractive index, specific heat. What is the meaning of a specific heat? It is the amount of heat required to raise the 1 degree centigrade temperature of a 1 gram of a substance. If you mention for a particular 1 gram of a substance, then the parameter, that is the measurable property which is independent on the mass, that's why it is intensive. Next, concentration. We know concentration terms molarity, normality, etc. are intensive properties. Okay, now here next one more example we have pH. Next, molar volume, molar heat capacity, molar Gibbs energy, molar entropy, molar internal energy. What is the meaning of a molar? Molar corresponding to 1 mole, molar corresponding to 1 mole. If the number of moles fixed, then there will be no change in the properties. Are you getting my point? That means you are defining for 1 mole, you are defining for 1 gram, then there will be no change in the measurable properties. Such properties are called intensive properties. Okay, now there are some important note here. Extensive properties of a system defined per gram or per mole of a substance, now they are called intensive. Just now I told you. Next, the ratio between any two extensive properties becomes intensive property provided both are changing. Now I will tell you by one example. Let's suppose I am taking best example, volume. Volume is a extensive property. Volume is a which property? Extensive property. Yes or no? Now here I am using molar volume. Molar volume. What is the definition of molar volume? It is a 1 mole of a volume. It is a volume occupied by the 1 mole of a gas. Molar volume is a intensive property. Why it is a intensive property? Because here we are defining for 1 mole of a substance. We are defining for 1 mole of a substance. Do you know, under STP conditions, where temperature will be 273 Kelvin, otherwise 0 degrees Celsius, and pressure 1 bar, what is the volume occupied by the 1 mole of a gas? 22.7 liters. Remember, volume is 22.7 liter. If you take STP condition as a 273 Kelvin and pressure will be 1 atmosphere, then molar volume, that is the volume occupied by the 1 mole of a gas, is taken as a 22.4 liter. Are you getting my point? Because 1 bar slightly less than 1 atm or 1 atm slightly greater than 1 bar. We know pressure volume inversely proportional. If the pressure increases, the volume should decrease. That's why 22.4 in case of 1 atmosphere. Whereas in case of 1 bar, so pressure will be slightly less than as compared to 1 atm. That's why the volume will be slightly more as compared to 22.4. That means if you take the 1 mole of a hydrogen, 1 mole of oxygen, okay, and STP condition, if the pressure is 1 bar, temperature 273 Kelvin, the volume should be always constant, 22.7 liter. Okay, otherwise 1 atm 22.4 liter and temperature will be 273 Kelvin. That means irrespective of the nature of the gas, the property 1 mole of a volume is always constant. That's why it is a intensive property. Are you getting my point? And the second key point here is The ratio between the two extensive properties will be an intensive property provided both the properties must be changed. Okay. Now here, do you know density is equal to mass upon volume? Density is equal to mass upon volume. Yes. If you divide the system into two equal parts, here I given here one example. If you divide the system into two equal parts, this is the mass m. Okay. Here on the left side mass become m by 2. On the right side mass becomes what? M by 2. Okay, so mass become m by 2 and volume become v by 2. If you take the ratio m by 2 divided by v by 2, again you will get m by v. That means density will be independent. Are you getting my point? Are you getting my point? The ratio between the two extensive properties, remember, the ratio between the two extensive properties will become intensive property provided both must be changed. And one more important thing, let's suppose we have best example, pressure, force acting per unit area. Force acting per unit area. Force will be extensive property. Area is also extensive property. The ratio between the two extensive properties, now it become what? Intensive property. Are you getting my point? Now here, for better understanding, I am taking one diagram here. On the left side, P1, V1, T1, N1, this is corresponding to number of moles of ideal gas N1, pressure P1, volume V1, temperature T1. On right side container, there is another ideal gas. Let's suppose P2, pressure of the ideal gas, V2, volume, and number of moles in this second container will be N2. Let's suppose I am taking in both the containers, temperature will be now same. Okay, T1. Now here there is a stopcock. There will be a stopcock. Now what I am doing? I am removing the stopcock. So once we are removing the stopcock, we know the gases will intermix spontaneously. After intermixing of gases, now we have to find the total volume. Now what is the total volume? Suppose if you open the stopcock, the total volume nothing but indirectly volume of the both the containers. So V1 plus V2. And what is the number of moles? Total moles, that will be N1 plus N2. That means here volume is additive, number of moles is also additive. So this is a extensive property. Extensive properties are additive in nature. Now come to what will be the total pressure. It is not equal to P1 plus P2. Remember, how to find the total pressure? PV is equal to nRT. So P equal to nRT by V. So total pressure, if you want to find, we have to take the total number of moles, RT, divided by total volume of the vessel, that is V1 plus V2, so that we can find the total pressure, but which is not equal to P1 plus P2. It is not additive. And what is the final temperature? That is not equal to T1 plus T2. Remember, temperature is an intensive property, melting point, boiling point. Let's suppose you are taking the 1 kilogram water. What is the normal boiling point of water? That is 100 degrees Celsius. If you take the 500 grams of water, that is also 100 degrees Celsius. If you take the 100 grams of water, that is also 100 degrees Celsius. If you take the 1 gram water, that is also 100 degrees Celsius. That means the boiling point of water is independent on its amount. That's why the boiling point is referred as a intensive property. Okay, and one more example to better understanding the extensive intensive properties. I am taking one solution. The solution has mass m and volume is V and density will be D, number of moles of solute N, and the molarity capital M, and the temperature of the solution will be T. Now what I am doing here, the solution is dividing into two equal parts. Let's suppose this is the solution 1 and this is the solution 2. In the solution 1, what about the mass? Become half? Yes, m by 2. What about the volume? Become half, v by 2. Number of moles of a solute is also become half, n by 2. Because the solute particles are uniformly distributed throughout the solution. If we divide the solution into two equal parts, number of moles of solute will also divided into two equal parts. Now what are the properties do not changes? Temperature, yes. Density, yes. Molarity. Molarity is also extensive property. Here if you see, just to explain, the density between the the ratio between the two extensive properties is a intensive property. Now here, do you know molarity? Nothing but number of moles upon volume of solution in liters. Okay, number of moles is a extensive and volume is also extensive. So the molarity now become what? Intensive. Are you getting my point? intensive property, because number of moles is a extensive property, volume is also extensive property. If the number of moles divided into half, that will be n by 2. Okay, if the volume divided by half, that will be v by 2. And if you take the ratio of n by 2 by v by 2, again you will get n by v. Are you getting my point? So the basic difference between extensive properties and intensive properties we know. Okay. Now the one more important here, density of ideal gas. Is it extensive property or intensive property? First of all, what is the formula to calculate the density of ideal gas? PV is equal to nRT. PV is equal to, where n is equal to number of moles, given mass upon molar mass, W by M. Okay, RT. From here, density D is equal to PM by RT. So density D is equal to PM by RT. Here, density D is equal to weight upon volume, otherwise PM by RT. Remember, I am taking constant temperature. I am assuming temperature is constant. Now here, is the density of ideal gas is extensive property or intensive property? We can say it is extensive property. We can also say it is also intensive property. How we can define it is extensive or intensive? Let's suppose I am assuming pressure is constant along with the temperature. First case, when pressure is constant. Now here, density formula, mass upon volume, which is equal to pressure into molar mass of ideal gas, R divided by R into T. Just now I told you what we are taking the constant, temperature is constant. Now I am assuming pressure is also constant. Do you know molar mass of ideal gas constant? Yes. R is itself a gas constant. That means this is totally become what? Constant. Okay. That means the density now become constant. That means when the density will be constant, let's suppose if I am changing the mass, according to which volume should also change, because the numerator denominator ratio must always keeping constant. That's why if I am changing the mass, automatically the volume of a gas is also changes and the ratio become what? Constant. That means the density of ideal gas remains same when changing the mass. Condition apply. Pressure is constant along with temperature. Are you getting my point? The second case, I can say the density of ideal gas is a extensive property. When we can say extensive property, if the volume of a ideal gas is constant. Okay, density changes on changing the mass of the ideal gas. How we can explain this? Let's suppose here, how we can say here, density D is equal to W by V, nothing but PM by RT. Now here what we are keeping the constant, temperature is constant, and also we are keeping the volume is constant. Okay, now in PV is equal to nRT, in ideal gas equation we are keeping the temperature constant, we are keeping the volume constant. Okay, let's suppose I am changing the number of moles, that means I am changing the volume. When I am changing the volume, which will changes? Pressure will changes. When I am changing the number of moles, definitely pressure will changes. Are you getting my point? When pressure is changes, according to which density is also changes? Yes. Even if you changing the mass, the density here changes because volume is constant. That's why in this case it is extensive property. Are you getting my point? Once again I am repeating, the density of a ideal gas may be extensive property, may be intensive property. If the constant pressure is there along with the temperature, then it is intensive. If there is a constant volume along with the temperature, then it is a extensive.